Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference. Stand with us. Speak up. Stay strong. You are Kentucky's voice.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
Open borders, shameful abandonment, disregard for human life, the prospect of more mandates and lockdowns, and the list goes on. Now more than ever, we need to stick together. Voting alone is not enough. We must use our dollars to support like-minded companies that fight for our rights and beliefs. Patriot Mobile is America's only Christian conservative wireless provider who shares your values. Last year, we gave more than $500,000 to conservative causes. With your support, we'll give more than $1.5 million this year. It's time to band together and support companies that truly love America and fight for our freedoms. Will you join us?
This is Kentucky's Voice Radio, covering the latest state and local issues with Tom Fallbush, Bob Scott, and Jim Waters.
And that is me, Jim Waters, here with you on a Wednesday, the Hump Day version of Kentucky's Voice. A young warrior for Christ and country, gunned down in cold blood. The radical left's rhetoric fueled the fire, but the media, they've been covering their tracks. Today on Kentucky's Voice, we're going to do what we do best, which is expose the hypocrisy, demand accountability, and turn to God for justice. Stay with us as we uncover the truth that some in the media won't touch. But first, a word about Kentucky's Voice. We're your bold conservative media outlet in Louisville, and we're taking this statewide. We want you to join us and partner with us as we broadcast live on radio, and then you can watch this on television this afternoon. We're live right now on 970 WGTK, and then you can catch us on Channel 21 WBNA at 12:34 and 8 today. You can see us and listen to us, and our goal here is to bring you news rooted in truth, common sense, conservative Kentucky Christian values, freedom, family, faith, integrity. We're delivering news through a conservative lens, holding local governments accountable and state government accountable, federal governments accountable. We champion conservative values here. You say, what is Kentucky's Voice all about? It's about having a conservative, common sense perspective about what's happening in our state and in our communities with honest, principled journalism that counters much of what you hear in the corporate and mainstream media. And you can catch it every day right here, 11 o'clock. We're here 11 to noon each day. And then, of course, like I said, live here on the radio and then on television. The show is rebroadcast or replayed on TV this afternoon. Same show, same content, same great guests and great analysis as we're going to have here today on this live radio program. But you say, well, what can I do to be involved? Well, you can partner with us in a couple of ways. First, you can support our efforts financially. You can text GIVE to 502-571-0970, or you can give online at kyvoice.org. Also, you can join the program with your comments and your opinions. You can text us on our Kentucky's Voice text line at 502-571-0970. Text us about the stories you hear covered here. Text us with questions for our guests or stories that we should be covering or guests that we should have. Just text me today. Let me know you're listening. Just text me and say, hey, I'm listening, enjoying the program. 502-571-0970 is the Kentucky's Voice text line. Maybe you'd like to share how this Kirk assassination, which has just shaken our nation and it is dominating the discussion, whether it's at the water cooler or on the airwaves or on social media. And I'd like to know, how has this affected you personally, your faith, your perspective? Let us know. Or again, just send us a text and say, we're listening. We'd love to hear from you. Without you, we wouldn't. In fact, we couldn't be here. So help us continue this work. It's a unique nonprofit ministry that's getting truth to our present and to our future generations. We're also building the next generation of conservative journalists here, committed to truth, integrity, traditional values. And we're looking for you if you're passionate about local politics or about your community, about defending liberty and the Constitution. You might be a college student, a journalism major, communications, maybe in political science. Maybe you're an aspiring media professional or someone eager to spread the conservative message. We're looking for you. Field reporters, video contributors, radio correspondents, writers, researchers, campus correspondents. We're focused on Kentucky and Louisville stories. If you're interested, email me. I can get you more information. jim.waters@kyvoice.org for details. It's a great opportunity to get some experience, to cover stories that we otherwise wouldn't be able to here, and also that the corporate media often aren't interested or miss for whatever reason. So let's amplify the voices that matter and join us and help us with this effort. Coming up in a few minutes on today's show, we'll be joined by Curtis Houck of the Conservative Media Research Center to get his take on how the national media has been covering the Kirk assassination. But first, we'll have the latest on the assassination, the investigation, the prosecution, which is beginning. Stay with us here on Kentucky's Voice, 502-571-0970. Let me know you're listening today, and stay with us for a great show. Don't go away.
Back to Kentucky's Voice Radio, online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to this Wednesday edition of Kentucky's Voice. It was just 1 week ago today, on September 10th, 2025, that our brother, conservative friend, soldier in arms, if you will, in ideals and conservative values, founder of Turning Point USA. He was a fearless voice for biblical principles on college campuses. He was assassinated, just shockingly taken out while speaking in the middle of his speech at Utah Valley University, where he was doing what he did best, and that is show up and convince young people that conservative principles are, in fact, the founding principles of our nation. They're, in fact, the founding principles of this project, Kentucky's Voice, and of our Commonwealth and of our country. Freedom and faith and family. If anyone embodied that, the 31-year-old young man Charlie Kirk did. It's hard to believe he was only 31 years old. He's accomplished more in his lifetime than most people who claim to be believers in and be conservative do in a whole lifetime. A single shot to the neck fired from the rooftop by apparently by 22-year-old Tyler Robinson. The only reason I'm saying apparently is because he's been charged with that, and he's admitted to it apparently in confessions. But one thing that is for sure is he's a troubled soul. He was twisted by lies and has apparently confessed, as I said, to this attack. Over 3,000 patriots watched in horror as he collapsed mid-sentence. He was talking about America's comeback through faith and freedom, and as he was advocating for conservative social values that we believe on this program and that you, our listeners, and I know you, our viewers, believe in as well. Governor Spencer Cox called it what it was. The Utah governor, Spencer Cox, who's been great. He's made some great points about what's happened here, and he's been a great spokesman and a great communicator about what's going on out there in the investigation and the follow-up. And he rightly called it what it is, a political assassination. President Trump pointed to the radical left's venom, calling conservatives fascist and threats to democracy as the spark that lit this fuse. And now the suspect's own text to his roommate apparently revealed the hatred. I had enough of this hatred, he wrote. I had enough of his hatred, talking about Charlie Kirk. So, which is ironic, is it not? Because Charlie Kirk, of all people, I think embodied what Americans involved in the political process should be. We should, and I guess that's the first point. We should be involved. We should know what's happening. I was disappointed at the Supreme Court hearing on charter schools this week and on education last week, because it seemed like many people were not informed about this issue. But we need to be informed about what's happening in our country. And then when we are informed, we need to be willing to advocate for our ideas. We've been duped by the corporate media many times into thinking that a passionate defense of our liberty, of our ideas and our ideals is somehow wrong. But the fact of the matter is, this country was built on such debate. It was built on philosophical debate over ideas. And violence has never been an acceptable way to settle our political differences. Let me say that. And the true conservative principle is that we do not settle our differences through violence or even through personal insult and attack, but through ideas. You know, when violence comes about, people who commit violence have run out of ideas. They cannot stand their ground in a debate. They cannot think for themselves. They've been brainwashed or duped. They've been radicalized, like apparently this young man was. And so let this be a lesson. It can happen. It can happen to our young people. It can happen, it can happen in our families. And, I'm heartbroken for this young guy's family. I mean, how difficult this must be, how hard this must be, because from my understanding, these aren't the kind of people who believe in this kind of hate and violence. And yet it's ironic that it's all focused on Charlie Kirk, who I guess I would ask, who among us has crossed the aisle and had rapport and relationship and conversation with those of differing political views more than he has. He has invited the debate. He has invited the disagreement. And that's, I think, reveals another thing that we see a lot of times about the left, and especially the radical left and some of the radical social views they have. Ours is a country of tolerance. We do allow for difference of belief and difference of opinion. And the First Amendment is very important in this country. It's freedom of speech. And I've always said, I may not agree with you, but I will defend your right to speak your views, and we must defend to the death, if necessary, the right to state our opinions and to have this disagreement, to have philosophical disagreement, and so it's important that we have that. But that doesn't mean I have to see everything like you see, or I have to agree with it, or I have to endorse it. That's one thing to tolerate differing views, but it's quite another thing. And we've seen this on the left, and this has been a big problem on the left, is they want to force everyone, they're not satisfied many times with you tolerating their beliefs, but they want you to endorse it openly. And if you speak and disagree with them, then you were canceled. We've seen that before. Now, I've heard some comparisons made with what's going on now with folks in certain jobs or in certain industries losing their jobs because of hate speech that they came out with about Charlie Kirk and endorsing the violence. That's endorsing violence, endorsing murder, endorsing assassination is a much different thing than simply not endorsing a view. Not endorsing someone's political view. And yet, it wasn't that long ago that many folks on the right were canceled because they would not do that very thing. They would not endorse the radical left's viewpoints. So I agree and will defend your right to say what you want to say and believe what you want to believe and do what you want to do. But it doesn't mean I have to agree with it, and it certainly doesn't mean that I have to endorse it. And that was Charlie Kirk's approach was, I have strong beliefs, he said, but I'm willing to listen to you. I'm willing to do my best to persuade you that my beliefs are the best. And one thing about it is he got a lot of young people involved in the political process. You would be hard-pressed to find anyone who, as a single individual, was more responsible for Donald Trump's election than Charlie Kirk and perhaps Robert F. Kennedy Jr. And together, of course, they knew each other and were allies as well. And there's another person who has been very open. The fact that we have a Kennedy in a Republican administration means that it's still possible, folks. It's still possible to have civil disagreement, civil debate. We need to do that more in our country. We don't need to just buy whatever garbage the corporate media might be feeding or whatever. We need to have this kind of debate and this kind of philosophical disagreement. But it needs to be that. It needs to be debate. It needs to be philosophical, and it certainly must not be violent. And so a conservative value is we settle our differences on the debate stage. We settle our differences on the floor of the State House. This is something else that's bothered me about the left in our state. When they can't win the argument, then they file a lawsuit or they go to other measures to try to stop what the people's representatives have agreed to do. And so that's certainly not violence, and they certainly have a right to do that. But it's a pattern that I think needs to be at least recognized and pointed out that folks who resort to violence do not have the ability to win the argument, and they no longer want to try to win the argument. So those folks, we've got to deal with that. And that's why it's very important that in this investigation, in this prosecution, that we come down hard on this, not just because of this particular situation with Charlie Kirk, but because of some of the things we've seen. But look, an airline pilot getting fired because he or she endorses the murder of a political activist is not cancel culture, like some on the left are saying. But when someone loses their job or loses their position simply because they wouldn't endorse a radical view of the left, or they spoke against it and argued with the idea and disagreed with the idea, that's two totally different things. Well, coming up, we're going to talk more about how the media has been covering the Charlie Kirk assassination with Curtis Houck from the Media Research Center, Newsbusters right here. We'll be back with that on Kentucky's Voice. Stay with us. Don't go away. You don't want to miss this.
Are you ready to stand for truth? Kentucky is at a crossroads, and we need voices that won't back down. This is your moment to rise, speak up, and be part of a movement that's changing the narrative in the Commonwealth. Kentucky's Voice is calling on bold citizen journalists, fearless editors, and those unafraid to speak truth in the public square. Volunteer, intern, contribute. Scan the QR code or visit kyvoice.org to join the fight. This is more than media. This is your moment. You are Kentucky's voice.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio online at kyvoice.org.
Welcome back to Kentucky's Voice. We're at 502-571-0970. We are Kentucky's conservative media outlet, and we're delighted for this segment of Kentucky's Voice on this Wednesday, Hump Day, to be joined by Curtis Houck, who's the managing editor of Newsbusters. I just like saying that, Newsbusters at the Conservative Media Research Center. Curtis, thank you for being here. God bless you and your team for what you're doing. You're doing some great work, and I'm just reminded of this over and over again, and I read all the emails, I read everything, try to read everything you're doing. But this is an especially important time, is it not, for media coverage and paying attention to what they're doing. What are you seeing, just generally, before we get into maybe some specifics? Walk us through what you're seeing generally in the coverage of the Charlie Kirk assassination, the aftermath of that, and some of the fallout that we're already beginning to see from that.
Yeah, right now at this point, as we're talking here on Wednesday, the networks, I think, are slowly starting to back away from the motive. I mean, yes, the charging documents and the text messages were released late Tuesday, and yes, they are mentioned, but they are but a supporting voice. They are a side story in the larger timeline of what they're talking about here. The wider cable news, social media crowd, CNN, MSNBC in particular, they are continuing to try and put the toothpaste back in the tube. By either A, trying to ignore it, suggesting Democrats aren't doing anything, in terms of celebrating or glorifying or trying to excuse the murder, or they're just simply trying to change it to something else, saying that, Montel Williams was on CNN last night and said this was probably just a star-crossed lover. This was probably his first real relationship. So he felt threatened by this person. So that's why he did it, not out of political hate, but out of, concern for his loved one. That's the kind of nonsense that we're seeing here. And the last thing I'll just say is when the president was blamed by the liberal media for the El Paso Walmart shooting, folks may remember that a few years ago. Now the media are saying, no. Each individual is in charge of their own thoughts and actions, and we should not have any sort of discussion about a wider ideology being at play and how we talk to each other. Yeah,
so you're saying the media is not wanting to address that, or not wanting to put that, but we have a real mix here, don't we? This guy's romantic relationship combined with his political hatred here and his and all of that was going on, his apparent radicalization, and those just aren't stories the media, the corporate media is comfortable with. We know that.
Right. Well, I wouldn't say that those kind of angles are not being mentioned. It's just that they are such a bit player. They are such a supporting
rather than
role
being the
all
dominant
this.
thought. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what's really troubling here. We're trying to understand why someone did something. Why? And then that's always the case when there's tragedy of any sort, natural or man-made. And so, but they're really trying to get away from that. Because they don't want to talk about it. It's no, the president has to set the tone. No, the president is making it worse here. Instead of trying to say, maybe our words calling Republicans fascist, authoritarian, racist, Nazis, Hitler, so on and so forth, for so long can have consequences. And if the media are as important as they say they are in being the bulwark of the First Amendment, they are the leaders on our public discourse. They tell us what to think and what to think about. Then maybe they should examine themselves in the mirror. And this lack of self-reflection is just one of many reasons why people don't trust them.
Yeah, we're speaking with Curtis Houck here of the Media Research Center's Newsbusters, and thanks for joining us a few minutes here, Curtis. Speaking of language used and by the left, how did the Biden administration specifically target Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA, his organization? Did they not target him as a violent extremist? I guess what do you have to say about this, and what can you tell our viewers about how this is backed up? And I think some federal documents that we have. I think we lost his audio there for a moment. We'll try to get that back here. But that did happen. We know from documents, the statements, I think from the Department of Homeland Security, the FBI, maybe, that there were documents backing this up, that the Biden administration considered Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA to be violent extremists. Isn't that ironic? Because you have the left talking about Donald Trump, calling him and his followers fascist and all kinds of names like that, violent or very intense names like that. And the Biden administration apparently considering Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA as violent extremists. I think some of this, is, is it projection maybe, because there wasn't a violent bone in Charlie Kirk's body. Was he passionate about what he believed? Yes. And I think we need more of that. And I think that's what attracted young people to this message. And something we need to do in this country is attract our future generations to a conservative message, not just because it's the cool thing or in thing, but because they actually understand some principles of it. And I think Charlie Kirk was an embodiment of that. And to have the Biden administration calling Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA violent extremist, I mean, this is just more of what we've seen. And so I think we may have Curtis back. Sorry about that, Curtis. But it's ironic, isn't it, that the left will talk about the Republicans' words and language and phrasing, and yet they completely ignore these kinds of things from the left.
They can't even admit when something happened to them who was doing it. You have the governor of my home state, Pennsylvania's Josh Shapiro. His home, the governor's mansion, was firebombed, and he's kind of going around talking about this was a person that was mentally ill. They had all kinds of problems. They're refusing to admit that he was a far-left anti-Semite. He was targeting the governor because he was Jewish. He was targeting him because this assailant had pro-Palestinian views, and obviously the governor, at least a moderate supporter of Israel. Mm-hmm. If the left is not able to have conversations and properly identify the kinds of people that are going after them, then what kind of ability do they have to say what's going on when one of their own comes after us as conservatives? Again, this goes back to being in charge of your own tone. Mm-hmm. The media, again, just demand the utmost of us, but not of them.
And it's more dangerous not to confront this, is it not? I think there's this whole mindset of not wanting to, and maybe well-intentioned in some cases, I think, that, hey, the less we talk about this, maybe it'll go away. It's not going away. We see young people being radicalized on social media, being influenced by this. And so the more we confront, that's what Charlie Kirk did, ironically. Did he not? Yeah. He confronted these things.
Yeah, and there's polling out there that from one of the major polling outfits talking about how more people on the far left than on the far right, quote unquote, support and don't see a problem with violence being carried out against their political adversaries. And there was an Axios story from a few months ago, I believe June or July, that said Democrats were telling Axios that their base wants them to fight. They want them to get bloody. They want them to get shot because they are that mad about Donald Trump. And then there's two quick issues here. Number one, it goes to the idolatry. Politics is someone's religion. They don't have any sort of moral value. Their lives are defined. Their happiness or lack thereof is defined by politics. And also, again, it's just a lack of understanding and facts. It's all about double standards for these folks.
And that's what Charlie Kirk was so dedicated to, helping young people.
And he didn't have to do that.
Understand.
He didn't have to.
That right.
He was rich financially and personally. He didn't have to still be doing these campus tours, but he did it anyway because you could tell he liked it.
Yeah. Isn't that what America's about, though, our history of people stepping up? It's about individuals, This is what collectivist and socialist societies do not celebrate. We should celebrate, and we need to celebrate and remember how Charlie Kirk individually made a difference, and how every one of us, I think, can individually make a difference in our community. We need to be focused on that, and we need to be convincing the next generation that conservative values and principles are the best, are worthy, and they can be defended, and they're constitutional, and they're what our country's founded on. Curtis Houck of Newsbusters of the Media Research Center, thanks for joining us. Have a great day, sir. We'll talk to you soon.
Hank.
And stay with us here.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio online at kyvoice.org.
Thanks for joining us here on this Wednesday version of Kentucky's Voice. Jim Waters in with you, as I am most Wednesdays here, and we're glad to have you with us. You're partners in this effort, and you say, well, how can I partner in building Kentucky's conservative media outlet known as Kentucky's Voice? Well, there are several things you can do. One is you can give at 502-571-0970. You can do that by texting GIVE to that number, 502-571-0970. You can also let us know you're listening. Text us. That's the Kentucky's Voice text and give line. So you only have one number to remember. We've made this as easy as we possibly can, 502-571-0970. You can also find us at kyvoice.org. And if you're interested in being a citizen journalist, helping us cover stories and developments across our state, this is a great opportunity. If you're an aspiring media pro, maybe you're a college student looking for a great internship and learning the ins and outs of media, and you can do it with a conservative Christian-based media organization, let me know, jim.waters@kyvoice.org. We'd love to have you. And you are listening to this live on the radio at 970 WGTK. As you can hear us here live each weekday, 11 to noon. And then you can watch us on Channel 21 WBNA in the greater Louisville area, and check us out at 12:30, 4, and 8 each day. Of course, we're focused this week on the follow-up and the fallout and the prosecution of 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, who is charged with the assassination of conservative political activist Charlie Kirk. And 1 week ago, it happened 1 week ago today, our nation lost this bold champion for freedom and faith and family. A guy named Charlie Kirk, only 31 years old. A lot of people don't believe that because he had been such a part of our national media landscape, and of course had been on Salem media right here on this radio station right after this program on most weekdays. And so this audience knows him well, knows who he is and was. He's no longer with us, gunned down at 31 years old before 3,000 people. He was rallying, and these weren't just people, these were young patriots at Utah Valley University. A single round to the neck fired from a rooftop 200 yards away, cold, calculated, a direct assault on the conservative ideals and movement that Charlie had built. And so the suspect that authorities say pulled the trigger, 22-year-old Tyler Robinson, and a radicalized young man. Radicalization is definitely part of this conversation. He was from St. George, Utah. He's a kid from a Republican Mormon family, once a straight-A student with a 34 on the ACT and an electrician apprenticeship. He turned himself in near his folks' place after spilling to Ken that he was responsible. His dad confronted him. Tyler shot back, "I'd rather kill myself, a shattered family, a derailed life." What flipped the switch? Well, radicalization must be part of this conversation. And I know that the corporate media is not necessarily comfortable with this, and I get it. Those on the left don't really want to talk about it. But here's a young guy. We need to understand this at least, and we don't have to be comfortable with it. Truth is not always comfortable. The facts aren't always comfortable. But I would rather know the facts and have the freedom and the flexibility and the right to make my own decisions about what those facts mean and how to interpret those facts for myself and my own world view, which is a Christian-based worldview. But here's a young guy, raised conservative, but he swung left just in the last year. He was pushing pro-LGBTQ views, butting heads with his dad over politics. And that's not unusual for a young person these days to butt heads. That's one thing. To butt heads, to have debate, argument, even passionate argument. That's okay, but violence is not okay. It's never going to settle anything. And here it's just destroyed another family. Tyler Robinson's mother told cops he had got more political, ripping Kirk as being full of hate at a family dinner days before this shooting. He trashed the Utah University spot as, quote, stupid. The Utah University that hosted him, Utah Valley University, is being stupid for hosting him. And his roommate, a transitioning individual, fully cooperating with the law enforcement. He transitioning to she is shocked. According to Governor Spencer Cox, who has made several statements about what's going on, and he called it straight. He said, quote, "This was a political assassination. It was no coincidence. It was targeted. It was from a rooftop perch. It was with a crowd packed below and in front of a lot of people, in the midst of a lot of people." And you have here this transitioning individual who was apparently Tyler Robinson's partner, to whom Tyler messaged, "Drop what you're doing, look under my keyboard." And there was a note saying, quote, "I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk because of his hatred for what Charlie Kirk stood for." And the follow-up said, he said in a text back and forth with his romantic partner, some hate messages or some hate cannot be negotiated out. I had enough of his hatred. And he had schemed for over a week on this, and he aimed to bury the secret forever. Of course, that never happens in a case like this. It was all hands on deck for the FBI, for law enforcement, who quickly, really relatively quickly, very quickly, have found and arrested Tyler Robinson. They've got evidence, apparently ironclad. Surveillance nabbed him climbing the roof with a backpack. No rifle was spotted, but he ditched a Mauser 98, his grandfather's weapon, wrapped in a towel in nearby woods. There was touch DNA apparently found in different places here. There were casings that were reportedly etched with anti-fascist slogans and gaming memes. He urged his roommate to delete text, to tamper with evidence, stay silent if the cops come, he said. And he fled 250 miles south in a gray Dodge Challenger, but the family flipped him after he started hinting that he might take his own life. The FBI's offered a $100,000 reward that lit up tips. Director Kash Patel praised the swift 33-hour takedown, and there have been state charges filed and likely will be federal charges filed, but they're probing. And so now, yesterday, September 16th, Tyler Robinson faced a Utah County court virtually with a green vest over his jumpsuit. His face was stone cold. No pleas yet. The counsel appointed has been appointed. 7 felonies have been dropped. They're just kind of determining what the legal case is going to be, but this much is known for sure, that the prosecutor, guy by the name of Jeff Gray, is pushing the death penalty, Utah style. Lethal in Utah, it can be either lethal injection or firing squad. It could be firing squad. The judge has locked in they've had this hearing, so there's a lot going on here. You know, I think there's going to be some unintended consequences from all this. I think if the hate mongers intended to turn folks against a Charlie Kirk or against what he stood for, I think it's just the opposite. And that's something we've seen throughout history. And I found this clip from this young guy online who said he had never heard of Charlie Kirk before. And but when he heard what happened, it got him engaged in what was going on. Let's have that clip if we can from the Instagram.
Let me just clarify. Y'all made me obsessed with Charlie Kirk. This came out of the blue for me. I never cared for bro content like that. Nothing against what he said. I was just never interested in clicking his videos to see what he had to say. But y'all made me deep dive and go down this rabbit hole because there was no possible way that y'all seen the same video I saw and half the world rejoiced it. And I'm just sitting here like, there's no way. Immediately I'm sitting here like, bro, nobody deserved to go out like that in front of all them kids, in front of his family. And y'all rejoiced it. Y'all celebrated it. And y'all ain't even had nothing to do with it. So I said, bro, he must have said something. I'm missing something. I'm seeing creators that used to talk about God and is going to get on here and compromise their belief, religion, faith to celebrate death. We talking about something that's biblical that you should never do. And folks is coming on here doing it. So I said, I got to deep dive into what he said, because is he on the status of Hitler? What am I missing? And somebody said, well, he would have did that for you. Well, I don't care. My morals would never allow me to celebrate death. Doesn't matter who it is. So the fact that you've been compromised, I have to get down to the bottom of it. And not just one person, too many. So y'all encouraged me to go down this rabbit hole, to figure out what bro has said for this hate to be sparked up or maybe revealed in a lot of people. And I'm almost satisfied, because now I started looking into stuff and I'm like, dang, so you felt like this. Your hate and evilness has been revealed within you. But what you said, the way he said, is cap. That's not even what he said. That's not even in the full context. So now I'm just starting to, oh, that was a lie. Oh, that was a lie. Wow. So, so now I don't know. I'm deep in it now. Pause.
So I love that, because here's a guy who's not political, a young person, not political, didn't even really know who Charlie Kirk was. But because of the violence and the willingness to assassinate him, he's become interested. And he's also a very strong voice against this type of there's no other way to say it, political violence. And again, we're not just talking here about cancel culture. This is not what we're talking about. And when people come out and they glorify this, we're not talking just about cancel culture. We're talking about something that is glorifying violence, and that's not acceptable. What is acceptable is disagreement. You don't have to see the world the way I do. You don't have to agree with me on everything or anything. But you cannot just silence me. You have to allow me to speak, and I have to allow you to speak. We may not agree, but we have freedom to do it. Stay with us. We'll exercise that freedom more next.
Kentucky's Voice is your home for real news, real people, and real answers. But we can't do it without you. Your financial support helps us bring truth to the forefront, hold leaders accountable, and give a voice to the people of the Commonwealth. Join the fight today. Give online at kyvoice.org or text KYVoice to 53555. Every gift makes a difference.
back to Kentucky's Voice Radio online at kyvoice.org.
1 week ago today, Charlie Kirk was assassinated while he spoke to 3,000 young college students at Utah Valley University out in Utah. And in the meantime, we have a suspect, we have a prosecution that's underway, we have the possibility of a death penalty. And when I think about this, I think we must say that political violence, and make it clear, it's not acceptable whether it's considered to be on the left or right. The shooting of a doctor who performs abortions, not acceptable. The blowing up of a federal building, for whatever reason, innocent people died. That's not acceptable. And it's also not acceptable if guilty people died that way. We have a system of laws and justice in our country that provide avenues for settling our differences and for punishing and adjudicating when there are criminal acts that occur. And imperfect as it may be, and our founders created a system that they knew was imperfect, but they didn't find anything better than this. And they valued the individual. They valued defending the rights and liberties and freedoms of the individual to speak and to worship and to associate with whom they chose and how they chose and when and how they wanted to do it. And as long as those freedoms, as they were expressed, were not violating the rights or liberties or freedoms of others. And they sought to establish an imperfect but a very good country. And we are a good country. And I'm not saying this today because I believe most people want to settle their differences that way. No, we still have plenty of folks who are willing to settle their differences and debate their differences, and maybe we don't agree, but we agree to disagree. That's okay too. But to do that in a peaceful, civilized way. And Charlie Kirk, that's what he did. He challenged people's thinking, and he challenged them to think about and consider and maybe reconsider some of their assumptions, and especially young people on a college campus, maybe some of the things they were hearing in the classroom. He challenged that. He himself was a dropout, was a school dropout, but he taught himself. And that's another, I think, great point about America is that you can create your own path here. Now, as Christians, we believe, of course, in that our lives are gifts from God, created by God, and that we need to follow and obey Him. But He gives us an opportunity to explore, to prosper, to increase, to grow, to change, to decide. He gives us the ability to make a lot of our own decisions. And with the freedom that we have in this country, that's how it's supposed to work. And that's what our founders intended, that a morally restrained people, a people of faith, a people who valued the scripture and valued Judeo-Christian ethics, that this experiment in liberty, in freedom, would work because of that. And that those who had this freedom would also have the responsibility of using it in a way that would further the good of their country and of their communities. And that's what we're to be about. And I think that's what Charlie Kirk embodied. And I'd like to hear from you. How has this affected you? How has the Charlie Kirk assassination, has it affected you at all? Or is it something you wish would just, that's been 24/7 coverage and for a while here? Be honest about it, about how you may see this, or how you may have been affected by this, may have been impacted by this. 502-571-0970. This off of our text line. They said it's not just young people. Plenty of older folks are radicalized as well. They don't understand the concept of debate or discernment. I think that word discernment is good. I appreciate that comment. And yes, I mean, I think depending on who you listen to, depending on your sources of information. And we have sort of a double-edged sword here when it comes to getting information these days. We've got lots of different options. We've got more sources. You know, when I was growing up, you know, the first thing I remember politically is the impeachment or the impeachment hearings of Richard Nixon and the Watergate hearings, I should say. And of course, they were headed for impeachment. But that's the first thing I remember politically. And I remember pretty much when I started working in this business, in the radio business back in my teens, there weren't a lot of sources of information. It was pretty much network coverage, 3 television networks. We had, if you radio people remember the Mutual Broadcasting System, that was the big radio broadcasting. They were radio only. We had the 3 commercial networks. We had Mutual, and we had the public broadcasting system, and that was about it. And then you had the newspapers, and you had the New York Times was the dominant, Washington Post, they were the dominant papers of the time. And now, even on the national scale, of course, you have many, many different sources of information. And where you get your information from, or who you listen to, or what you pay attention to is important. And I think it's important that you do listen to people that have different viewpoints than you have. I think Charlie Kirk, one of his great strengths was he understood what the opposing viewpoints were. So he wasn't just listening to or speaking to an echo chamber that all agreed with what he said. He really did understand what the views of his opponents were, of his ideological and philosophical opponents. Many times they were personally not opponents. So he made a point of not being personal about it, not having personal opponents. Many of the people that he disagreed with philosophically or politically, he was also friends with. And he would put an arm around them, and they would have a friendly conversation. That's how we need to be, folks. That's how we need to be. Another commenter off our text line says, so I'm trying to figure out if hate speech comes under free speech. Pam Bondi says she's going to target people that use hate speech. The term hate speech apparently originated in the 1980s. I'm pretty sure there was hate speech before then, but I'm thinking it was allowed as free speech. Not sure. Great point. Let's talk about that for a second. And let's talk about free speech. As we said earlier today, and I think it's worth repeating, we are guaranteed as individual American citizens under the Constitution the right to speak freely. The government, what that means is the government cannot censor your speech or cannot keep you from speaking. They cannot deny you the opportunity to do that. They cannot punish you for doing that. Now, what some people don't understand is that when you speak out, there may be consequences that are not related to those protections from the government. And so we have folks in the aftermath of Charlie Kirk's assassination making comments glorifying his death, glorifying the violence. And ironically, these would be the same people, many of them, who would condemn some of the things that Donald Trump has said, some of the things that people on the right have said as inciting or inflaming violence and violent responses. And so there's not protection for that. You still have the right to say that, and you still have the freedom to say what you want to, but that doesn't mean there aren't going to be consequences. Now, when we have the Attorney General saying she's going to target people that use hate speech, I've got concerns about that, quite frankly. And where that goes and what that might mean and what she's planning on that. But what we cannot have is government denying people the right to express their views, express their opinions. But let's be clear, that doesn't mean there can't be consequences with your employment, with your own personal life. There may be consequences, and you need to think carefully about what you say. So we have freedom of speech, and it's a tremendous freedom. There's a tremendous power in that. But I do think that you need to think about how you express your views and what you say and how you say it. I think that's where we've had a lot of issues too, is how things are said. And if you watch Charlie Kirk, that's a great example of how to do it, how to disagree with somebody without being disagreeable, to use an overused cliche and phrase. But still, I think worth saying in this point is, we'll say it this way, how to be civilized in our disagreement. You know, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, John Adams, the founders of our country, Benjamin Franklin, they didn't agree on a lot of things. In fact, our Constitution is the outgrowth of their debate. And so you had these great minds, but nobody has it all. Nobody knows it all. Nobody can handle it all. And that's why we had a group of leaders, and that's why we have advisors in our government, and we have representatives. We have folks representing us, and they're debating these issues and debating on the floor of the House and debating on the floor of the Senate. And that's how our country was built. That's how the Constitution was created. Because if one person would have done it, they may have been very well intentioned, but they wouldn't have thought of everything. They wouldn't have considered all of the consequences of what it was they were proposing, for example. So that's one of the reasons why the Constitution was amended. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and these amendments were added to ensure that individuals had the right to express themselves, had the right to bear arms, had the right to due process, were protected from an overzealous government, whether that be an overzealous prosecutor or an overzealous law enforcement agency or whatever it might be. And this off of our text line too. Hate speech, how about sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me? Has anyone been fired for using the word, for using certain word? I'm not going to say that, but look, I think it's naive to say that words cannot be as powerful as actions. Words are powerful. But the Constitution protects our right to speak as we will. We have to have that freedom. And some people may misuse it, but I'd rather protect it and protect the rights of most people who use it in the right and productive way. Thanks for joining us on